My name is Besnik, and this is my cousin Robin, and we're here to tell the story of our grandparents, Jelena and Hasan.
So first we're going to start off with a little history because to better understand the story you need to know the conflict between the two countries, Serbia and Albania. Our grandmother Jelena was from Serbia and our grandfather Hasan was from Albania.
Well, technically she was from Montenegro, but her family was
Serbian descent. For many years, for hundreds of years, they've been at war and fighting because Serbians were trying to take over Albania and they killed their people, kids, would hang them, very close to a genocide. And so the hatred for each other was very strong, and even people who weren't affected, it was just known that if you were Albanian, you could not interact with a Serbian. If you were Serbian, you could not interact with an Albanian.
Our grandmother Jelena had a farm, and so did our grandfather, and their farms were located right next to each other, and the lands had a barrier, but it wasn't really a wall where they couldn't see each other. They were kind of divided by a small fence, and our grandmother would go out and milk the cows and herd the animals, and so would our grandfather, and that's where they met. They started talking, and as time went on, they realized they had this relationship that was starting to sprout, and they couldn't really show their affection as both families on the opposite sides knew that they were not allowed to interact under any circumstances.
However, since their love was so strong for each other, our grandfather decided to propose, and she felt very strongly about this, so she told her father. However, in Montenegro and in Serbian culture, it wasn't normal to get married at a young age. She was 14. But in Albania, that's mostly what they did. They were all getting married young. And he was a few years older than her. So when the father found out, not only because he was Albanian, but also since he was older, he took her to court. And he tried to fight it, saying, "You can't allow my daughter to get married.
And you can't leave this family at a young age because it's illegal." And she had to explain herself to the court that no matter what the penalty was, it doesn't matter because her love was too strong for anything else to affect their relationship. So the court basically threw out the case because they realized that there was no getting through to her. She would not go back to her family. So the outcome of this whole case was that her father and the rest of her family were forced to disown her based off of the father's decision.
So she had to basically run away with our grandfather and
to his family in Albania, and they didn't know much on the story, but they knew that there was something off about her. But she created this whole persona as an Albanian girl who was basically lost, couldn't find her family, and her grandfather fell in love with her. They didn't know so much that she was Serbian or even from Montenegro until later.
But even then, our grandfather had to go to the war against Serbia and fight with them. And while our grandmother was left alone with his family, they knew that even though they didn't know whether she was Serbian or not, they knew she was different, and they didn't want to take care of her, they didn't want to help her. She had a few miscarriages and a few babies that they wouldn't help her. She didn't have a job, and she didn't have money to feed these kids, and they wouldn't help her at all. They didn't do anything for her, and he basically left her in a shack, and she just had to try to fend for herself for like 2 years. So once her grandfather came back from the war, he tried finding better work. He was getting job offers in Germany, and so they moved there for a few years. They had 5 kids at that time.
Yeah, they had 5 kids at that time in Germany. He had
including our fathers.
Yeah, and he had 2 jobs while our grandmother wasn't really allowed to work because in Germany, women really didn't have jobs at that time, and she had to take care of the 5 children in their small apartment.
And then it still wasn't working for them, and they needed to do better, so
once they racked up enough money and they felt secure enough to leave again, they decided the number one place they could go and live out their lifestyle and dream was to go to America, and they went to New York City.
So they came here, they were really poor, but they managed to get a small, cheap apartment in the Bronx.
Yeah, it was really unsanitary, unhealthy, the environment was poor, the neighborhood was horrible. And at this time, they had 7 kids on Holland Avenue, I believe, located in a section of the Bronx.
So basically, and they didn't know English, they had to learn it from scratch. Not many other people were Albanian, so it's not like they had people like that could help them.
So
they
in a
knew
way,
a few other people, but
they
didn't have enough.
They had to create also like a new lifestyle in America, like with new names. Like in Germany, our grandfather Hasan went by Hansen, and our grandmother Jelena went by Helen. And when they moved to America, they realized they had to create even more modern names. So in a way, they were like nomads because they had to travel, but they also had to adapt and in a way westernized their lifestyles. And eventually, good came their way. They just did a lot of working and they had a lot of faith. And the apartment building that they lived in, they ended up owning, which helped them gain enough money and build enough money and credit and all those good things to buy a house up in the Bronx and buy Pelham Parkway, which is where till this day I live. Our grandfather did cleaning in 2 different buildings, and he also drove a taxi. And our grandmother later got a job on Wall Street as a almost as a cleaning woman.
And later, Nana, our grandmother, reconnected with her parents. Well, the mother.
Her father
Came.
died, and her
Yeah,
father
he
had died
by then.
with such anger towards her, which till this day she has a feeling of devastation
Yeah,
about.
because they never reconnected.
But she knows that it was worth it because nothing would have happened in her life, and all this greatness would have never came if she didn't take such a massive leap of faith.
But she did reconnect with her mother, who came to America to visit and see the family. And there's a family photo of all